my name. Start a new life. But I could never escape his shadow.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we're your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai. What's up, guys?
Hello, we are back again for another installment.
We're punching with each word because this episode is awesome. I mean, it's for an awesome character.
I'm also incredibly exhausted and tired. It's been a very long week, so I'm trying to psych myself up because I know this episode's going to be incredibly long, and there's so much to cover.
So much to cover. I've warned Geoffrey at least like 12 times, like, man, this episode's gonna be long, and we joked that it could be longer than the actual movie that it's based around. And so, yeah. Before we get to all of that. We do have some podcast news, which is pretty awesome. Are you going to punch every time?
Probably.
Oh, God. We are officially streaming on Amazon Music and Audible. So if either of those streaming platforms are your go-to, we are on there.
Woo!
So thanks to everybody who helped make that happen. Yeah, we're there. Please subscribe, rate, do whatever you want. And also, I hadn't mentioned before, but we officially have merch. So we have 2 t-shirts, a cap, and those are all available on our site, which is in the link in bio, wherever you're listening, or in the show notes. So check it out, if you will.
Exciting stuff.
Exciting.
We made it, truly.
You know you've made it when you've made your own merch. And so, yeah, I guess we can just kind of dive right into it and let's go. As always, we're not experts. We don't claim to be. So, hopefully here we cover some great stuff about a great character. And if you agree, if you don't agree, send us your comments. We'd love to hear from you. So today's character, episode 11.
Oh, yeah.
In true A Stark Contrast form, we're going to have a character study based off of Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
I wish we had that soundbite of him explaining the pronunciation of his name. Maybe we can cut
that in
here.
There might be a clip, I think.
And so this character is very relevant, especially right now. We're recording this on a Sunday. Simu Liu is trending everywhere.
Wow.
And this is opening weekend of the film. And so, the thing is that many people don't really know about this particular character. He's been kind of buried as far as Marvel Comics lore has gone, if you compare him to the other notable characters especially. But so we're going to dive into Shang-Chi.
Let's do it.
First and foremost, he was created by Steve Englehart and Jim Starlin. Now,
That's right.
And do you remember who Jim Starlin is?
Yes, the creator of the Mad Titan himself.
Yes. Thanos. And so Jim Starlin himself, like Geoffrey said, has created many cosmic characters. And so Thanos is one of them, Gamora, Drax. A lot of the Guardians lineage is due to Jim Starlin's creations. And so he happened to also create Shang-Chi of all characters.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and his first appearance, Shang-Chi that is, was special Marvel Edition number 15, December 1973.
70. Oh, that's
73.
That's like amidst the kung fu era of Bruce Lee and
Exactly, and that's kind of, it's funny to see this kind of for instance, we're recording this episode as Marvel releases the movie, and so you think back to the 70s and Stan and the creative team having their summit. And then they're like, all right, so these kung fu movies are awesome. What can we do with the martial artists? And thinking about how they were going to represent that sort of, pop culture phenomenon. And so, unfortunately, I was just telling Geoffrey before recording that I do not have a single trading card of Shang-Chi. And so, like I mentioned very briefly, is that there's this moment, this pocket, where he was not in the mix. You know, he just wasn't there. And so in the 90s, I combed all of my sets. There's not one. I have plenty of the Mandarin. The Mandarin is, you know, kind of related in the story in particular, but none of him. And even in my digital NFTs, I have a ton. She has a lot. I have a ton of Shang-Chi cards now because of the movie, but none of them have actual information on the back. So so sadly, I can't read anything from that as far as that's concerned. But I guess my question to you, Geoffrey, as always, what was your first exposure to this character?
Well, I mean, technically, it's, you know, when the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 came out. So like it was the Mandarin, but it wasn't really the Mandarin.
Yeah.
And they touch on that actually of that Iron Man 2. Was that 2?
Yeah.
That was Iron Man 2.
2 going into 3. I think at the end of 2, no?
Oh, no, because Iron Man 2 was Whiplash.
It was Whiplash.
Sorry.
But,
okay, so Iron Man 3 was the Mandarin thing.
But didn't he have a cutscene or something at the end?
Maybe. I forget. But so, I mean, so that was like the only, at least with the 10 rings and everything, that was like the only exposure.
Yeah.
So, and then up until then, or up until like right now, you haven't heard of Shang-Chi until like the last, was it 2019 when they announced him? Yeah. So
that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, like for me, he's kind of been, once again, he's like recessed to the back of the line.
Yeah.
Just because he wasn't being utilized as frequently as he could have been. And he wasn't in titles that were, I guess, you know, at the forefront of, you know, like he wasn't in a Civil War type of title until recently. And so we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
And
because there was one storyline that I saw on Twitter where like he taught Spider-Man how to fight in the comics in one of there was like I was seeing that like the way of, I don't know what it was. And I think maybe Seema has said like in like an interview saying he's like, I want Shang-Chi to meet Spider-Man.
Oh my God.
And then because he teaches him like whatever it is, how to fight or whatever.
It's probably the key thing, the you know, the chi and the harnessing.
Because he loses, like Spider-Man loses like his webbing or power or whatever it is, and I forget the storyline. Forgive me, but
I can't think of it. But right off the top of my head,
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh my gosh, and you know they're like kind of in that right like moment of age range and post blip and all that stuff. I mean, I would love to see that. But yeah, you know, Shang-Chi in particular, he's one of the few Marvel characters who doesn't have a moniker or a dual identity.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he just doesn't. And I mean, like off the top of your head, can you name any? Any others?
Any others who don't have
who don't have a dual? Like Jessica Jones is one, but technically she did at one point.
Yeah.
But like Shang-Chi, it's like a very small demographic if you think about it.
Wow, now that you think about it, there's not that, because it's like we can go down the line. You know, Tony Stark, Iron Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Thor.
Yeah. Norse mythology. I mean,
it is what it is. But most characters, have.
Yeah, they always have a dual, and he's always
just had that.
Shang-Chi.
It's true. That's how they explain it in the movie.
The power of the name, right? And so, you know, like before we get too crazy into the comparisons here, like this obviously contains mild movie spoilers.
Yes.
We're gonna try and hold it back, but you know, just a forewarning. But you know, like you may have seen in the film by now or not, you know, Shang-Chi, the character in general, he was quite literally born into the world of assassins.
Yeah.
And so they've kept very true to this in the film, where he's, you know, like straight out of the womb almost, you know, he in the books was like taught by his father, okay, you're going to be this trained martial artist who's going to learn how to kill a man every way imaginable. And so in the books, his father's name is Fu Manchu, which is a very notable phrase or name because it's very often connected to that mustache, the Fu Manchu.
Like the facial hair,
the facial hair in general, and of course that all spirals down from a more thorough story that we'll eventually get to once we get into Shang-Chi's family. But Fu Manchu in the comics was part of the Five Weapons Society. And so in that, it's kind of like a ring. It's very much like a clan of killers. And, you know, they focus on these five elements, if you will. of fighting and fighting styles, and then they're the staff, the saber, dagger, hammer, and the hand.
Yeah.
And so those are the 5 elements of that. I don't want to call it a team, but the group, the sanction.
Yeah.
And so in time, as he grows, Shang-Chi becomes familiarized with the fact that his father is essentially like a bad guy. He's a villain. Let's just call it what it is. And he comes to terms with it, and he inevitably teams up with quote unquote the good guys. And one of them is named Dennis Nayland Smith, and he teams up with the MI6, which is the military intelligence section 6. So British intelligence, and so it's kind of interesting that they kind of weave those united forces in. And as a result, Fu Manchu considers Shang-Chi an adversary from that point in. And then he's just like, you know what? I'm just going to try killing you.
Interesting.
Wow. That's it for the rest of his storyline. Is that
in the comics?
Yeah. Is
Jeez.
that it's kind of like his great foe is unfortunately his father. And so he encounters many other adversaries along the way. Obviously, like any hero does, he has this journey filled with different villains and all that.
So he's never really crossed over with your typical Avengers in the comics?
He has.
Okay.
He has. So on top of all of that, his dad is still his number one enemy.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's the sad story of it
they
all.
kept that. They kept that storyline.
They kept a little bit of that,
yeah.
And so just some generalizations as far as Shang-Chi goes. He identifies as bodhisattva, which is seeking the path to Buddhahood.
Okay.
And not attaining it. And speaking of teams, he himself has been on House of Champions, the Avengers, the MI6, Marvel Knights, Heroes for Hire. And most recently, the Agents of Atlas, which, for me in particular, or for any Asian that reads comic books, that's a big deal because that team almost entirely. It's all Asians.
Oh, okay.
And so it's an Asian
Sick.
superhero team. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean, yeah, that's hell yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, all right, if you're all going to plant these seeds and then eventually have this team.
Yeah.
They don't have to be the Avengers, but to have the Agents of Atlas present in the MCU, mind-blowing. I would love to have that. That would be crazy. And so for your benefit and for anyone listening, that team consists of the Asia team. So they're different, sanctions.
Oh, okay.
And so the Asia team itself is led by, I can't wait for your face, Jimmy Woo.
Jimmy Woo?
Jimmy Woo is leading. So he's like the Maria Hill sort of.
So you're telling me
Jimmy
Randall Park is that leader?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So Jimmy Woo leads Agents of Atlas. It's kind of think of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And you know how Coulson is eventually so Jimmy Woo is he's the Coulson of that team.
Jeez.
And then so alongside a character named Arrow, who is a more recent addition, a character named Brawn, Crescent, Giant Man, Io. Is it Io or did I put low? I think I might have typoed that. I can't remember. Luna Snow, who, if you aren't familiar with Luna Snow, they introduced her into one of the mobile games at first. She's the first K-pop Marvel hero. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
wow.
her day job, she's a K-pop star. And she's also a hero.
It's hilarious.
It's pretty dope. I know. And then Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan.
Nice.
A character named Protector, Silk, who we've talked about a few times. Shang-Chi, Wave, White Fox, and the Swordmaster. So that's that team. And it's of course, different people come in at times and assist and all that, but I would love to see that kind of thing.
No, I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, he's in San Francisco. Jimmy Woo's in San Francisco.
Oh, that's a good point. Oh my gosh, yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah, and so from that, we're going to pivot on over to MCU land. And so, I want to preface this with the fact that Geoffrey and I were lucky enough to see the film mid-August, thanks to Marvel and those early screenings they were having. So thanks, Marvel. That was a delight for us because we were like, yay, now we don't have to worry about spoilers.
Yeah.
And it was also just so great to see the film, almost a month ago, which is also kind of crazy.
Yeah, and then when we watched it opening night, it was kind of like, okay, now we can watch it and kind of just really take it in.
Really absorb it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, and my dad asked me about this the other night. My parents were visiting, and so I got to take them to a screening on opening day. And he is like, oh, so how many times have you seen the movie now? And it's kind of funny to explain to my father, like, the film has been out for 24 hours. I've seen it 3 times. Like, you think about it in that sense, and you're like, oh, dang.
That's what I said to, like, someone asked me, and they're like, oh, this is my second time seeing it. They're
Yeah.
like, the second time already? And I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. And, but for me, I like to revisit them quickly after the first time.
Yeah.
Because it really gives me a chance to really take in the dialogue, to really take in visuals, because I'm very observant when it comes to the films, and I'm looking at stuff that
same.
And I'm not necessarily trying to look for Easter eggs or anything, but I just really like soaking in every iota of the film.
It let me also kind of like take in like different emotional beats, like maybe I saw something the first time, and then the second time I was like, okay, how is this affecting me right now? And I notice more things about a certain sequence, which I do have, like, where I'm like, there's times where I was like, okay, yeah, maybe that sequence, I was like, maybe it wasn't like the same for me as I thought. So that helps seeing it like a second time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll say, like, the first 2 times emotionally, it didn't get me as much as I thought it would. But the third time seeing it with my parents, oh my gosh, I was telling Geoffrey this. I was like, I bawled. I was bawling, like, during scenes. Again, I've seen 2 times before.
Yeah.
But because of the
Which
emotional
ones?
thing.
Which one?
Well, of course, it was the parents and the family aspects really got to me.
Yeah.
And the very Asian aspects of the film. And also just because it's like that kind of film, and Marvel gets you in that way where you can relate to it in different ways.
It's a family film first, if you think about it.
Exactly. And so, needless to say that this is another MCU origin story and the 25th film in the MCU.
25 already?
25th film.
25 films in, 11, 12 years?
I mean, Iron Man 1, yeah.
It's about 2 films a year. Wow.
And how many did they do this year, you think?
This is the second one, and they have 2 more.
No. Yeah.
Oh.
And they have 2 more. Yeah, you're right, because Black Widow. And then they have Eternals and Spider-Man. So it's like...
And not even including the series.
And not even including the series. So they're really cooking with gas right now.
Yeah.
So imagine by the end of the year, we'll be on our 27th MCU film.
I mean, I'm not complaining at all.
And so some details about the film, portrayed by Simu Liu, who is adorable, and
who asked for this role.
He quite literally asked for it.
He was like, what are we gonna do about this, guys? Like, come on, let me audition.
At
come on.
Marvel, hey, yo.
So good, and he got it, and it works.
What a story.
Yeah.
That's why I'm firm on it. Really couldn't have happened to a nicer person who just seems very humble, but he just knows how to handle himself and professional.
He's hilarious on Kim's Convenience
he's so
too.
Funny.
Yeah,
he's so funny. And I admit I haven't seen the entire series yet.
I've seen a good amount of episodes.
Yeah, and I've seen a good amount, and he's just fabulous. The entire cast is great,
Yeah.
but he is hilarious. And the film, of course, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, screenplay story by Dave Callahan and Destin Daniel once again. And before we get further into the movie, I wanted to quote Shang-Chi superfan Nick, who said after seeing the film, "You're gonna have to bleep almost this entire quote, my friend." All right, here we go.
Yep.
Holy fuck, that movie was phenomenal. Holy fuck. And Nick is a friend of the podcast, Peter Melnick, and so we've kind of been corresponding through him, third party.
I don't even know if that. I don't even know. I don't know if anyone's gonna get the context.
It's just gonna be beep, 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 beep. Let's just say Nick really enjoyed the film, and he is super fan. We're talking comic books all the way back. So if he loved it, that says a lot. And then of course we have Sherry on Twitter, who was a little more reserved with her response and said, "OMG, I loved it. So beautiful. I have a soft spot for dragons. The fight choreography, gah!" And then 5 dragon emojis.
Oh, nice.
So the responses about the film are just absolutely wonderful, and I'm so happy to hear that people are enjoying it as much as I have and how you have, and it's great. It's great to know that they actually the studio put effort into a film that is quite honestly the Asian community's version of Black Panther. Like that's
Yes,
our
100%.
pioneer.
Yeah. And they stayed pretty true to like when it came to like
The
Asian
authenticity.
films.
Authenticity.
Yeah,
It's key.
I was really like, the movie started off with subtitles, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, cool. Like we're in it. I was just
Yeah.
like, we're in it.
Exactly.
They're letting them speak like the language, like an actual foreign film.
Exactly.
And like, and I was just like, yep, that already was. I was like, this is gonna be solid.
And it's like, what the director of Parasite said, it's like if you're gonna let 1 inch barrier of
Yeah.
subtitles keep you from enjoying a film.
Yeah.
I mean, man, and so that the fact that they were able to really pull that off, and again in the first like 10 minutes is like,
He's like,
wow.
if you're able to get over that, like you said,
The barrier.
1 inch barrier, you're gonna be
Yeah.
exposed to so much more
exactly.
creativity. And,
Exactly.
I was like, this is great. This is
Fabulous.
freaking great.
Yeah.
And she touched on the fight choreography, and
It's intense and
Yes.
it's so beautiful. And so, in the movie, I guess the 10 rings are, the name itself is broadened so much more than it was in the books, because in the books, it's quite frankly 10 rings.
Like
They're literally 10 rings.
I saw that.
And, and upon our first viewing, and upon like seeing the promotional materials where the father, who we now know as Wenwu, is wearing 10 rings on both forearms.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, oh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to judge too quickly, because I was like, okay, in the MCU terms, the 10 rings, I mean, we just came off of the Infinity Gauntlet. And the gauntlet itself, and stones.
And it's on the hand.
Yeah,
It's
and
kind of,
it would be very repetitious, because they're not that they have similar. I mean, they might have some similar aspects as far as powers go, but like to go from, okay, these stones possess these powers, and now like these 10 rings.
I
have
also
these
saw
powers.
a picture of how like it looks in the comics.
Yeah.
It's like literal 10 rings and
Yeah.
all like different colors, and it's
different
like
colors and different. Yeah,
And I was just like, I don't know if that would work.
It wouldn't
in,
have
like,
worked.
MCU.
I am convinced it wouldn't have worked. And I, like growing to know it in the MCU's, counterpart version, I was like, okay, cool. And so like, to further bring it from an ornament of sorts to like a straight up, it's a group of people like in this community, in this sanction of fighters and underlords, whatever you want to call them, to bring them into this 10 ring society. I think it's safe to say they're very equivalent to the 5 weapon society. So
Okay.
they're the MCU's version of that from the comic books, which I totally get. Is I think that's right on the money. I think that's the way to do it. And so I made a notation here I just wanted to touch on. Like they make points in both the film and the books about westernization of the Asian culture. And so in Shang-Chi #1, in 2020, it was written by Jean Lung Yang and drawn by Dai Ruan and Philip Tan. And the quote, he says this great quote in the book, because they kind of make that thing of like, oh, why don't you use Chinese name, or why don't you, why don't you speak the dialect? And he says, at one point, he's questioned by a colleague, and he says, I found that if I show my cadence and use wise words, Westerners look at me rather than past me when I speak. And so it was kind of like questioning, like, why do you always almost speak in proverbs? And so he was kind of like defending himself of like, well, I'm not doing it because I'm Asian, but I'm doing it because I want people to understand the words that are actually coming out of my mouth.
Oh, very profound.
So it's very profound, yeah. And I was like, that's a neat way to look at it. He's not playing up to some stereotype, which in the past, because again, that was from last year, versus his 70s counterpart, may have been vastly different. He didn't want to be a walking fortune cookie.
Yeah,
and we've seen that before. It's like, okay, we don't need to do that. And so I thought that was a great pull quote, because it spoke to what was important to him beyond the stereotype. And again, like they mentioned that in MCU. And there's that dialogue again, like Shang-Chi, like what? And then and even Katie, his friend in the film, played by Awkwafina, like, what is your Chinese name?
What's your Chinese name?
And then the fact that her Chinese sucks because she's a first generation sort of Asian American, and going into those little details that are actually quite common among our community. I thought that was so great. And so I don't know if you know this, Geoffrey, but the film itself, its theatrical history goes as far back as 2001.
The which one?
The film itself.
It goes back as far?
So they've
tried to develop this.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
They have tried to develop this film since 2001. And so back in the day, let's take it back to 2001.
Jeez.
Stephen Norrington was set to direct the film.
Uh-huh.
And then in 2004, it was then supposed to be produced by Ang Lee,
Okay.
who did the Hulk film.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
The very first Hulk film by Universal. And then in 2005, they were going to have Yuen Wu-ping and DreamWorks develop the film.
Interesting.
And then 2006,
Okay.
Marvel decided they would then be producing it with Paramount Pictures.
Interesting.
And then it just goes dark.
Damn.
So the Shang-Chi and the movie concept went dark after 2005, and it didn't, 2006, and it didn't reemerge until 2018. And then that was with
Interesting.
David Callahan was the first person that they were like, all right, we're finally doing it.
Oh my gosh.
And then 2019, Destin Daniel Cretton comes in, and then they're like, all right, we're going.
Like we're doing it.
So if you imagine, like, oh my God.
That's 18 years of
just like, well, what if?
Yeah. But I mean, now you think about it, trying to make that kind of movie in the early
And
2000s.
tastefully,
And tastefully,
Yeah.
especially during that time of movies where things were probably not done in good taste.
Yeah, exactly.
At least when it comes to like Asian representation in general. So.
And I was trying to think of like what films were floating around in that time frame, you know? And like immediately, you know, like Kill Bill comes to mind, and Kill Bill 2 comes to mind, and
I mean, Crouching Tiger, Hidden
Crouching
Dragon.
Tiger, yeah, that was a big one. And then like Memoirs of a Geisha, maybe a little earlier than that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, even like, obviously this isn't like one of those, but like the Jet Li movies, like with Aaliyah, and then like and DMX and
DMX,
stuff.
yeah. And you know, I was wondering too. Because my X-Men timeline is all jacked up, but I think that like Wolverine Origins, X-Men Origins Wolverine, and Logan, and the Wolverine, they all came out in that pocket of time where there was just nothing. Yeah. And so I wonder if the studio was like, so what are we gonna do?
It was
about
so hard
that?
doing superhero movies, comic book movies, like during that time, because it's like no one took it seriously. It's like, why would I? Yeah, like it was so hard.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that they finally got it together, because the end result is so much greater than I think what would have happened had they tried to push this baby out in 2001.
Yeah.
And then perhaps remade it, you know, and it's like, nah, they did good. They did great. And so now we're going to go into Shang-Chi as far as his powers go.
Okay, yeah.
And I pulled a quote that I think really does tie in his inevitable prominence in the films. And it's the quote, "An alliance between the mystic and martial arts." And so Jeffrey's given the face.
All right.
Because you know, we see it, you know, again, mild spoiler alert, or unless you've seen the trailers, you know, like Wong is present in this film, and he is a derivative of Doctor Strange and that side of the MCU. And so to hear that Shang-Chi's powers in particular are like harnessed, it's an alliance
like
between mystic and martial, is like, actually that makes a lot of sense. And that's a good word, I think, for the film, because, you know, people kept asking, what did you think of it? Like, what did you really think of it? And I'm too easy. I love anything that Marvel shoots out. You know, like I'm like,
same,
I liked it.
100%. Yeah, people always ask me, did you like it? And I'm like, I mean,
of course.
Pretty freaking good.
But it didn't occur to me until someone else said it, that they used the word mystical and magical. And I was like, you know what? That's the word. Because like mystical, it's very different in a way that it's not magic necessarily.
Yeah,
but it's mystical because it has a it has these fantastical animals and the thought of harnessing power from spirituality and
or from
and that
like
stuff.
another source.
Yeah, exactly. And so let me riff off his powers real quick. This is going to be crazy because this is a literal paragraph of powers from this kid.
Okay.
And so here we go. Master martial artist, skilled gymnast, peak physical conditioning, skilled marksman, throwing shuriken, for instance. Weapons proficiency, nervous system control. So
nervous system control?
Exactly. So this is in the books, mind you. Shang-Chi, he can control his nervous system, enabling him to deaden his body to physical pain. So he can resist drugs, poisons, limit spreading of neurotoxins and blood.
Can't wait to see that in live action.
Can you imagine? Like, he can even slow down his bleeding rate. So if he got shot, he could be like, oh, and he doesn't necessarily have regenerative powers, but he can slow the
bleeding
slow
down.
it. Yeah. And so that's like, they're really honing in on this idea of like mind over matter.
Okay.
Mind over matter. And so, and he's not invincible, but he's so in tune with his body and his inner power his inner strength that
you gotta give him something.
Exactly. So I wonder, to your point, if in the films inevitably he gets to this point where he can be like, oh, broke my arm, fix it.
I mean, he has
get
to.
shot. Oh, I'm gonna slow it down.
That would be very interesting to see.
That'd be kind of crazy, right?
It's kind of cool because you have your Superman who's invincible, you have your Deadpool and your Wolverine who basically can't kind of die unless you do something incredibly drastic.
Yeah, and even then, Deadpool himself is like a tiny, tiny baby Groot, where if you just get a branch, you're like, well, he's gonna regenerate in 48
and
hours.
And then you have Shang-Chi, where it's like I'm not invincible, so I'm still technically human, but it's like you can't kill me.
Yeah. And so on top of that, he still has a power pressure point locator, so it's like a system where, not a system, but like he can just identify, and he knows it by now. He's mastered this art. He has espionage tactics, and he's a philosopher, and most importantly, Geoffrey, he's a patient fisher.
Fisher.
He's a fisher. I was like, well, that's an interesting notation.
Yeah.
And then whereas in the MCU, his counterpart is quite literally just master martial artist, staff mastery, knife mastery, and master acrobat. And so he's got a long way to go.
In the movie. That was all present in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's got a journey if he's gonna live up to all that. But I mean, honestly, he's got a bit of the larger list already. Like he's got some of that skill going on. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the chi and the internal energy, the power. I wrote, wow, so powerful, he can dodge bullets, which is also true. So he can dodge bullets very quickly. And then, the thing I wrote down about the MCU is that, spoiler alert, the 10 rings empowerment. And so that's vastly different. Like, that's just an added thing for that particular film.
I can't wait to dive into the history of the MCU, 10 rings that he uses.
Exactly.
Because...
that's going to be a wild one. And so we have yet to explore the rest of that. So that's going to be interesting. And then there's a line in the film very casually thrown in that Shang-Chi speaks 4 languages. And so in the books, it's actually identified he speaks English, Cantonese, Mandarin, Ancient Mandarin, and French. And with that, I have a pop quiz for you.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a crazy one. I do have a couple here for you.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so.
Stimulate my mind.
Ready, air, punching. Shang-Chi has gone toe-to-toe with some of the Marvel Universe's most skilled combatants.
Okay.
Between he and Iron Fist, who do you think the Black Panther dubbed more skilled?
Ooh.
And so if you know anything about Danny Rand and Iron Fist, there's this, alternate dimension kingdom thing called the Kunlun, and he has a glowy hand, fister person. And so he's all about the chi as well.
Yeah.
We have not yet spoken about Iron Fist, but if you look at them from just a strictly surface level stance, They're comparable. They're very comparable to one another. So who do you think is the more skilled?
Oh God!
From T'Challa's perspective.
I should have watched The Defenders. Oh.
Yeah, probably. Well, Danny's pretty good. I mean, especially comic book.
Yeah,
this is a strictly comic book.
Clips,
Yeah.
but not, like
Yeah. Comic book Danny's pretty
In
awesome.
the eyes of Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna go with my boy Shang-Chi.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go.
Shang-Chi. Okay. Well, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong because that is actually very accurate. So Black Panther has fought both of these men in the comic books, and I believe he drew with one of them, and I think it was Shang-Chi, and it was kind of like he's just far more skilled in that sense, where he can really combat with all various types of fighters.
Yeah.
And not to say that Danny can't, but there's just something about Shang-Chi in particular that is especially more powerful than even the Iron Fist himself. So it's kind of like, are we going to see a melding of these characters in the future? I don't know. Because I almost thought when I watched this film, I was like, are they going to Kunlun? But it ended up being a different place.
Talo.
I wasn't going to say it, Geoffrey, but yes, Talo.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Is that a spoiler?
It's kind of a spoiler. So they go to this other, Jesus, Geoffrey.
I'm keeping it in there.
I tried. But yeah, I just thought, I'm wondering if perhaps that they're going to inevitably weave those worlds together, and that's their reintroduction to MCU Iron Fist.
Okay, yeah.
Or is he done? I don't know now that we have Shang-Chi, because they are similar in ways that yeah. And so I made a note to mention this, but so the fighting is such an aspect of this character, and the film undeniably, and so like the opening scene is a beautiful fight.
It's still my favorite fight scene.
And so that is then followed up later by a fight scene that we see in the trailers where Shang-Chi is on this, this bus. He's on a bus going through San Francisco. It's a normal day for the character. And that guy, the guy filming, now has his own Twitter account. It's a character named Clev. Do you remember where we saw Clev before? Because he has been in another MCU film.
Wait.
You
no,
really?
God. I feel like I remember. I saw this on Twitter or something.
Yo, it's your boy Clev here.
Clev.
And he was filming in the original one too. He was filming in his first cameo as well. Come on, Jeff.
No, I'm horrible.
No, you're gonna. Because I'm not gonna know it, and you're gonna tell me, and I'm gonna be like, ah.
Hey, yo, you really Spider-Man? Do a flip, Spider-Man.
No!
That's Clev! I totally yelled into the microphone. But that's Clev. Clev is that guy that holds up his phone to Tom Holland on top of the building.
I'm gonna watch it again.
And he's like, yo, Spider-Man, do a flip. And then he goes, big, and he's recording it, and Spider-Man does a flip. That's Clev. So Clev has had 2 little cameos in the films. And so I'd personally like to know if he's a martial arts specialist, so he says. And so here we go. We're gonna jump into the big boy here. This is the family topic, and so we're gonna go a little backwards, okay? Because usually I start this out with the father, but because he's so important in Shang-Chi's world, I'm gonna go backwards. And so I'm gonna hit it first. MCU, Ying Nan or Nan Ying is Michelle Yeoh.
Yes.
Do you remember where we first saw Michelle Yeoh in the MCU? Because this blew my mind. I was like, oh, dang, yeah, that's right. She was already present in the MCU before this film.
Oh, God.
Come on, Jeff. He is a little tired. I will give him that.
Oh, wait, no.
Adulting is hard.
Because how I know Michelle Yeoh, or got introduced to her at least, was Crazy Rich Asians, because she was so freaking good in that movie.
Amazing film.
And then you backtrack, right? And you're like, okay, she's been in this, she's done this.
MCU,
Michelle Yeoh. Come on.
No.
All right, I'm gonna just cut to the chase. Alita Orgord in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Oh my God!
Oh shoot! I'm like, My mic just rattled.
Because
Yes.
Miley Cyrus is also part of that.
Exactly.
Oh
Sly
my
Stallone.
God.
She's Sly Stallone's wife in that film.
She's a Ravager.
She's a Ravager.
She got the Gemma Chan treatment.
Yeah, she did.
Well,
it was a little better.
But she had a small role, and then now she has a bigger role.
Well, now I'm like, oh, is Alita Orgord like just never coming back now? Because or is she gonna
Multiverse.
And so, so we've seen Michelle Yeoh in the MCU already.
Oh my God.
And then I'm gonna bounce over to comic book land. So in the comic books, Shang-Chi's got quite a few siblings.
Okay.
So his half-brothers are Moving Shadow, Brother Staff, Takeshi. And so they all have these titles that are associative to the 5 weapons.
Uh-huh.
And so he has an adopted brother named Nai, half-sisters Zheng Baoyu, Kuai Far, Esme, who is also Sister Dagger. She's awesome. And Zheng Jilan. And then this is where we kind of hit the fork in the road. So in the books, his sister's name is Xiwa Zheng, or Chung. See, I don't know if I should say it as in Chinese or should I just
I thought it sounded pretty.
flip it.
I was like, oh, that was good.
Okay, so let me do. I'll do Chinese with the surname first. And so in the books, his sister's name is Chung Xiehua, who is known as Sister Hammer. And so Sister Hammer is jacked.
Nice.
First and foremost.
I would hope so.
she's like 6'8".
Oh my God.
She's shaved head. She's like arms for days.
Okay.
And as you could tell by her namesake, her weapon namesake, hammer is kind of her thing. The hammer is her thing.
Nice.
And so I couldn't readily find immediate distinctions that linked her to the MCU sister, who we know as, Zhai Ling.
Xialing, yes.
Also called Ling Ling when she's little. And Zhai Ling in the film is very much like she's a self-taught martial artist, and she uses the dart arrow, and so I didn't really find that's a huge stark contrast to me in particular, because it's like, okay, I don't think that Zhai Ling is supposed to be anyone in particular, but because he has so many siblings in the books, perhaps she's an amalgamation.
I feel like they did that a lot with like the characters in this movie, where they kind of like they added new ones or re kind of structured, obviously, like with the dad, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
So I feel like they kind of had to like do that just because at the time when like the comics was written, it was a completely different time.
Exactly.
So now it's just kind of like, okay, let's start Shang-Chi's back like family story from basically scratch.
Yeah, I think so. And then his mother in the film, beautifully portrayed. Oh, let me back up real quick and give a shout out to Menger Zhang, who plays Zhai Ling. Yeah. And I love her.
Yeah, she was great.
I defy anyone who does not love her. She's incredible.
And I think they set her up to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's
really,
not done yet.
Yeah, she's not done.
We're gonna see her again, and I can't wait. Jumping to Shang-Chi's mother in the film, beautifully portrayed by Fa Chen. She's so lovely.
Love her.
And that's Ying Li. And so, believe it or not, mother in the comic books, it's one of those incidents. No name. Wasn't important enough to give a name. I'm like, come on, guys. What's up?
Or was like at least conspicuous enough to not get.
Yeah. So she has an unnamed mother in the comic books. And so that brings us to Papa. And so here's where we're gonna get real deep. All right. So in the films, he is portrayed by like Hong Kong film legend,
iconic Tony Leung.
Yeah, and he portrays Xu Wenwu, who is AKA quote unquote the Mandarin in the film.
The Mandarin, an orange.
The orange, named after a chicken dish.
He named me after a chicken dish.
Yeah, and so he's the big baddie that we have kind of heard of and seen portrayed by Trevor Slattery in Iron Man, as Geoffrey mentioned. And so I am not sure where the Mandarin, the original aspects of that villain are going to go in the MCU. I guess we'll see. But in the books, holy cannoli, the father story is so
It's messed up.
It's all over the place. And so you might have seen this, like in tabloids and in blogs about, oh, Shang-Chi's racist, like backstory.
Yeah.
And so, as we mentioned earlier, like, so let me preface this with that the character does have a name now, and it is Chung Sun. And he was originally a villain named Fu Manchu, who appeared in Detective Comics number 17, July 1938. So right off the bat, if you didn't notice that.
Say it again. What was the date?
Fu Manchu appeared in Detective Comics first.
Oh.
That is DC Comics. And so Fu Manchu himself is actually a creation of a novelist named Sax Rohmer. And so he along with two other characters that exist in the Shang-Chi comic book world were derived from this novel written by this author. And so his rights were just kind of like acquired by whoever wanted to pay the fee. And so by that, Fu Manchu himself first appeared in DC, and then it wasn't until the 70s that Marvel actually introduced him as Shang-Chi's father. Oh, okay. And so he was almost like, again, it's a testament of the times, and we say this so much in the show in general. And so for the 70s, it was like he was the stereotypical Chinaman, with the wispy mustache and the cat eyes, and this is why it was such a problem, because it really stereotyped the entire culture. And that the entire culture was bathed in this very they're always drug lords, they're always underlords, they're always this character. And so, the character was derived from this series of books written with the concept of yellow peril in mind. And so that right there, the yellow peril, is like, if you want to read up on that, that's like a nice long journey into history. But it's essentially what I just mentioned, where this was a moment in just general history where Americans, westernization, and the vilifying of the Orient.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Jeez. That word that comes back. I know. And so this was square, like Rohmer's novels were of that time. And so when the comic book properties took the rights and all right, let's make a new villain. And so they just kind of went willy-nilly with it and thinking, oh, this is great. We have Fu Manchu in our comic.
Oh God.
Only to realize oh wait, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And so unfortunately that led to Shang-Chi's inevitable ostracizing, because he carried with him, unfortunately, this plethora of again the word stereotypes and just the negative
it's pretty tough
contexts of that. And so, which is crazy to think of, because you imagine modern comic book fans who are getting to know this character through the MCU. This is their first exposure to this character. Yeah. And then if they try to go backwards to find these books,
and they're like, whoa, what happened?
If they can even find them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because at this point, it's almost like, I almost feel like they're just after they stopped printing, they were like, no.
No, we can't let this, because times have changed. We can't this is messed up.
It's messed up. And so, so Fu Manchu had become this archetype of evil, genius, mad scientist. And so his story wasn't even, despite the 1970s arrival in Marvel Comics, it wasn't until 2010 that the story was rewritten with Chung Sun in mind.
Oh, okay.
And so, oh gosh. So the rewrite of his story came courtesy of Ed Brubaker, who we mentioned in the Captain America episode. And he's that guy. He's the guy that wrote, who created the Winter Soldier. And so we have him to thank in some respects for the Secret Avengers arc. And it was this part of the book, the Secret Avengers book, and the arc itself was called Eyes of the Dragon. And so that arc is where Shang-Chi is with the Avengers And he gets like very much like the movie, he gets a message that he has to return to find out some things. Yeah. And it ends up being a
trap.
It ends up being a trap. It's a twap. It's a twap. And it ends up being Cheng-Jun. And he reveals like, oh, I'm not dead. I'm actually, the man, blah, 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 blah. Like, like I'm your father.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of those things. And he dies at the end of that arc.
Jesus.
So he's reintroduced.
Yeah.
And almost immediately, he's gone.
Oh my God.
And so he is dead. He's dead in the books. But at least they did the right thing and they rewrote that history like, oh yeah, your father, it was almost kind of like the Trevor Slattery Mandarin story that you'll get to know, is that, it's like, actually, that was all a ruse, I am your real father. Yeah, it's interesting. But it's a four-part story arc. It was really good. And yeah, so his father actually had much more, I feel like the father aspect was really the shadow that kind of ultimately is the reason for Mortal Kombat. Hello, Shang-Chi.
I'm keeping that in.
Shang-Tsung. Oh my gosh, where is my head? From Shang-Chi's history, which is kind of crazy, if you think about it. And so we actually got an interesting tweet today, and it was from Nick on Twitter. And he says, "Did you notice the tail number on Wenwu's chopper?" So in the film, Wenwu is always he's always in a helicopter, and so apparently on his tail number, his plate, it's WW888.
WW888.
Yeah. And so I Googled the 888, and I know this because my sister, for instance, it's a spiritual number.
Okay.
So it's like almost like an ascension to God type of number. And I was like, oh, that's poetic.
Wow.
So that was a kind of a fun fact. So keep an eye out for that, because I've seen the movie 3 times and I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And then, on the topic of Wenwu in particular, Shang-Chi and his adversaries, I mean, they're kind of all over the board. In the film itself, we see Wenwu, of course, the 10 Rings, the Death Dealer.
Yep.
And Razor Fist. And so we've kind of touched on the Mandarin aspect from the comic books. Whether or not they're going to follow that path continually, who knows?
Yeah.
But with Razor Fist in particular, I thought it was really interesting because in the books, there's actually 3 incarnations of that character.
Really?
Yeah. And, like in the film, you see in the trailers too, he's got his right arm.
Retractable.
Yeah. His right arm has a retractable, literal, razor blade for a fist. And in the books, Homeboy is both. So he's like a Baraka, speaking of Mortal Kombat.
Like Scythe from Pokemon. Same thing.
I love that I talk about Mortal Kombat and then you bring up Pokemon.
Our knowledge goes way deep, guys.
We're so diverse, yeah. So in the books, he's like, you look him up.
That's
and he's got,
gotta be so
what?
inconvenient.
No,
Being completely honest.
How do you itch your nose, bro?
How do you go to the bathroom?
How do you do anything?
Bro!
But I guess he changes it for a fist or something. Maybe.
Yeah, it's just too much work.
It's just oh my god. The comic books are funny.
Oh, love it.
And so it's kind of like that's the movie version. They kept it tight. They kept it to small adversaries, and
very. Yeah,
I think
they didn't want to pack too much.
Yeah, which is great. And so for the comic book itself, other notable adversaries, Cursed Lotus, and so this is another character that is a derivative of Ramos' stories. So there are 3 characters total were pulled from Ramos' novels. And so the first one, like I mentioned before, was Dennis Nayland Smith. And then, of course, Fu Manchu. And then now, we're going to talk about a little bit about Cursed Lotus, who is Fa Lo Sui. And she's actually the half-sister of Shang-Shung.
Oh, okay.
Why am I saying Shang-Shung? Oh, my gosh.
That's twice, Dai. Twice. One more time and we're ending the episode.
No. Oh, finish him. Okay. Shang-Chi. So Fa Lu Sui, she's the half-sister of Shang-Chi. And so she's known as Cursed Lotus in the books. And so I almost wonder if Because, you know, once again, Marvel lost the rights to these characters in particular. The 3 that were borrowed.
Okay.
And so she's been in more modern books, and I almost wonder if Mom, you know, if Xialing and Ying Li were kind of lifted from her a bit aesthetically, if not like also because, you know, her fighting style seems very much like the mother. But she was leader of the Oriental Expediters.
I don't know why that
know.
word triggers me for some
I know,
reason.
right?
I don't
Like
know why.
it's such an archaic word if you think about it. Especially, I don't know, maybe because we're Asian, but it's just we just don't use that anymore.
There's so many other words you can use.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, among the other notable adversaries, there's also Lady Deathstrike, who I know you're familiar with, and then the big one for me, and I just had to write him down here, is Fing Fang Foom. Fing Fang Foom.
Oh my god.
Do you know who Fing Fang Foom is?
That sounds very familiar for some reason.
Giant green dragon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so he is not actually just quote unquote just a dragon, but he is an alien that of the species Makluan,
Okay.
and he's a shape-shifting alien from Kakaranthara.
These names are, I am not going to remember any of these.
And so I just had to plant that seed because that's my theory for some things that might be that might be happening. And also I just want to see Fing Fing Foom because I love dragons. And you know, from throwing it back a little bit in the 90s Fantastic Four series and Iron Man, I think he was actually in the cartoon.
Oh, okay.
And Mandarin was there as well, so I think it was Iron Man. And so they were the 2 main adversaries for Iron Man.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, he's just a giant green dragon, and it's pretty dope. And it'd be cool to see more dragons because, like,
I mean, there was like
And so I think we might see Fing Fing Foom in the future. So we'll see.
I can see a sequel happening.
Yeah, right. And then now we're going to talk about love interests. And so, you know, funny enough, Shang-Chi in the books doesn't have many definitive love interests. So in the books, you know, like Shang-Chi's love interests, it's a pretty lean array. I only have 2 noted here. And so the first one is Leiko Wu. I mean, Shang-Chi himself describes her best. She's a beautiful British secret agent.
Nice.
And she's awesome. She has this violet outfit, and she's kind of like the headache. They kind of have this dynamic where it's tough love. And she worked for MI6.
Okay.
And then there's Juliet, who is also a British agent, who falls in love with his adversary, actually, the cat, Shen Kui. And so, you know, we don't see either of these in the MCU yet. And of course, I guess their counterpart in the MCU would be Katie, who again is played by Awkwafina, aka Nora Lum. And I don't know how many people realize this, but she is a fully original character.
New character.
Completely new character.
Thought
So whether or not she's an amalgamation, we don't know yet. Whether or not her role is something larger that hasn't been revealed yet, we don't know.
Probably, I mean,
but they could.
They made it
very
seem
well.
like it.
Yeah, they very well could.
Which I'm not mad about. I mean, I love that
Yeah.
for Awkwafina. That's great.
Yeah. And you know, like my friend Chuck Torrance on he's 100% Soft. He actually asked me too. You know, like he's like, "How did you enjoy the movie?" And the funny thing is that I've been honestly like one of my first responses has always been, I hope they don't romanticize
I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Shang-Chi and Katie, because I would love to see a strong platonic friendship in the MCU.
Instead of having to be like, they fall in love.
They fall in love, because like I had the same thing when I first watched Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like, I do not want Gamora and Star-Lord to get together, but of course I've changed. I've changed my opinion. I mean, Volume 2 it did me in. I was like, oh, okay, fine. I still prefer her to like be murderous and threaten him at all times. But the way that James Gunn presented their relationship and how it
kind of developed and formed.
how it developed, I was like, okay. And then, of course, once it comes into Infinity War and Endgame, I was like, oh, okay.
I'm fully invested.
I'm fully invested.
How dare you?
Don't ever change it, like bring her back. And so I could feel different about their, Shang-Chi and Katie's relationship later on down the line. But like, as for, like for me, against, once again, like coming from an Asian American background, and I grew up with a best friend that was a boy, that was a guy. And like our families are, are you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's like, no, no, auntie, no.
Sorry,
no,
please,
Lola, yeah.
please.
Yes, no, we're just friends. And so I would love if they kept that. If they end up changing it, sure, whatever. Like, I'm sure they'll have the right story to tell with that. But I would love to see one of these British babes come in and how Katie then reacts to that. And,
maybe that's part of it too, yeah.
And the bigger picture of how all of this comes together for Shang-Chi himself. And so I have another pop quiz for you.
Ooh.
Related to, on the heels of Katie.
Oh, okay.
And so, it's a multiple choice.
Okay.
Just to save you. Which of the following characters did not have a comic book counterpart until after their MCU debut?
Oh, interesting. So the MCU movie came out,
Yeah.
and then that character got added to the comic book
Chicken
run.
came before egg.
Jesus.
So which of these characters
Uh-huh.
did not have a comic book counterpart until after their MCU debut?
Ooh, okay.
Here we go. Phil Coulson from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
and etc. Luis from Ant-Man.
Oh.
Melinda May, also from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's Ming-Na Wen. I had to throw her
Yeah.
in because I love Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah, same.
Or Eric Selvig from Thor.
Interesting. Wow, okay. I never knew this.
Exactly.
Damn.
It's a short list too.
I'm sure.
I think that's all of them. I think there's maybe 2 other people, but so who did not have a comic book counterpart until after?
Ooh.
Phil Coulson,
Ooh.
Luis, Melinda May, or Eric Selvig?
I really want to say Louise, only because like
He was so great in the movie, or
Yeah.
you're like, gotta add this guy.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Is that your final answer?
I will go with, but also Phil Coulson. But I feel like
I'm gonna go Louise.
Well, that face. I wish everyone at home could see this.
Come on.
Technically, you're not wrong.
Oh well, die.
Bada bing, bada boom. Trick question. All of them did not have a counterpart until after their MCU debut.
I'm ending the episode. This is bullshit.
So, like, legitimately, but like, think of that. Like, all of those characters,
We're so good.
they were so good, they
Yeah.
were so original that they did not exist in the comic books until after the films, after the shows came out.
Which is crazy.
And so that includes, like, Darcy, for instance. Darcy's another
Darcy's
one.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes
So these characters that we've come to know and love now have these comic book counterparts. And so an interesting one that, that people I think would have guessed would have been Jimmy Woo, for instance. Like, Jimmy Woo, Randall Park is so good. Of course they put Jimmy Woo in after. And it's like, well, no. Jimmy Woo is one of the ones that actually, he's been there for forever. Like, he's been there for a while. And so to know that, like, Phil Coulson, Luis, and these other characters have officially bridged the gap and made that conversion backwards. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool. And so I wonder if Katie will as well.
Probably.
We'll see. Yeah.
I mean, maybe like you said, the Shang-Chi comic book run right now, like this are currently, so.
Exactly. And then, let's talk about a little bit about aesthetic and tech. And so,
yes.
the first and foremost, like, we always talk about this as far as, like, the glow-ups go.
Yeah.
And so in the film, like, by the third time, I tried to really, like, okay, what are his glow-ups in this film, right?
Yeah.
Like, is his hair a little different? His hair's a little different by the end of the film.
Okay.
Little different.
Yeah.
But, first and foremost, it's the garb. The garb is very interesting. And I think like in many Asian or even just in general, color plays a big part in this film. Because like, for instance, you see in the beginning of the film, like Wenwu goes through, when he meets the mother for the first time, he's wearing all white. He's going from a white, and then after her fate, he's in black, and he's more entrenched in the villainy of the Ten Rings, and then you see red everywhere, which is of course very common for Chinese. Red is luck and power, and of course gold as well. And so for Shang-Chi in particular, it's interesting to pay attention to the colors that he wears. Yeah. Because there is a lot of red and white, and the purity of white and the innocence of white. And as we go along, it's the same thing. And he gets to the point where, and you've seen it in the promotional posters, he's now wearing all the red and the black accents. And I think that's pretty dope. Like, that's a great...
It's pretty, like the whole torso part is like super cool.
It's so cool. And then, it goes without saying that the ceremonial garb, both in the comic books and the MCU, are passed down from ancestors. And so they keep that, and once again, they keep that heritage, thing going.
Keep it really true.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the 10 rings as well, which they are now selling individually as fine jewelry. So you can get you a single 10 ring.
You're going to make you buy all 10 individually?
That was the best thing about the post when they announced it, because it's this company called Rock Love that's based here in LA. Okay. And I actually own 2 pieces from them. I own a Groot tree branch ring and an amulet that has a stone in it from Guardians 1. But so they're making this sterling, whatever it is, ring. And everybody in comments, because it doesn't say the price. On the post, it doesn't say the price. And everybody in the comments is like, you telling me I got to buy 10 of those at $100 a piece just to get a full set? So they're $100 a pop.
Oh my God. They better friggin'
I'm sure they'll make one. Yeah, I know, right? He's doing the fist thing, where he's trying to pulse power from his...
That's actually kind of cool. When I saw the first trailer for that, and that's how the 10 rings work in the MCU, I was like... That's actually really
It's crazy,
creative,
right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, I almost got the vibe of, very Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. And I could see why people might like it for that aspect because, it was just so much power coming out of, a single little,
godlike power. Makes you like a godlike
It's being. So cool. Yeah. And so the 10 rings themselves, in the books. And so I have a graphic that I'll probably post. And so it breaks down what each and every ring does. And so whether or not this is actually this correlates with the MCU, don't know. And so in the comic books, the 10 rings themselves, there's the Remaker shatters and reimagines relationships on a subatomic level. Influence creates various forces that cause a body to undergo change. Spin decelerates time around the wearer, appears as super speed to the watcher. Spectral winds up and warps the air itself, can appear ghostly, can appear not at all. Nightbringer creates malleable darkness, a dark light. Zero opens a beam of nothingness from the icy heart of outer space, creates a deafening boom as the vacuum is filled. The Liar creates world upon world of illusionary fable, as impossible to escape as a tangle of dreams, but vexes the wearer as well. Lightning creates a directable electrical atmospheric discharge. Incandescence contains the miniature heart of a star and scorches the air before it. And Daimonic, the irresistible urge that propels into the unknown. The compulsive creates loyalty, creates obsession.
Jesus.
And so, you think, time, space, power. That was one thing with the gauntlet. Yeah. Now we have these things that could inevitably be influencing.
I wonder if they are going to do those things individually, though.
Right. Because I feel again, mild spoiler, but I feel Zero, like opening the beam of nothingness from the icy heart of outer space. It's almost like, is that the power that's being propulsed, or is it the lightning that's, electrical atmospheric discharge?
Yeah, they didn't really in the movie. This is not a spoiler, but they didn't really go into the background.
Yeah, at all.
Of like the rings. It was just that first story that the mom was telling that like he may have. Legend says he got it from a crater or he stole it from a tomb, and they never get into it up until like maybe the spoiler alert.
Yeah, maybe the end, one of the end credits.
One of the end credits scene, and maybe they'll obviously
explain that
in like a future movie.
Yeah, but like thinking about it, it's almost like it's kind of like they had these 10 rings and their powers on a board, and they're like, okay, what can we subtly nod to? Because like the deceleration, the creating obsession, it's like, oh,
that's kind of insane.
Yeah, and so
at a subatomic level, what the hell is that?
I mean, it fits the shoe. There's like the shoe fits,
it
right?
Does, yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like that fits right into like. You want to go into Ant-Man land and you want to go into multiverse, like.
See, now I'm like with all these movies coming out, I just feel like any superhero can make a cameo in any movie.
Yeah.
For like,
truthfully,
you know what I'm saying?
Which is crazy, but that's great.
And who's to say Simu didn't film a cameo? You know, like during like while they were filming. You know,
exactly. Which is like the secrets.
Yeah, it's like
and so and like to your point, like I mean, but having people being at a point where characters can make cameos and it makes total sense. Is exactly what should be happening. Because that's how it is in the books. Like, somebody steps in, you don't go, why is Captain America here? It's like, no, it's Captain America. He's here.
When we saw, like, Wong, the trailers were like, you're using to spoil Wong. And
and then it's like, of course, there's a bigger picture to it, and thankfully, like, cool, we'll be able to see that. And so the rings themselves, that panel was from Invincible Iron Man Annual Volume 1. As recently as 2013, Kieran Gillen, he wrote an arc in the Iron Man books where he has upgraded, not Kieran himself or not Iron Man himself, but the rings have been upgraded, that they're now sentient.
Jeez.
So they can speak to each other. And I believe that they can mock the wearer as well. So they can communicate.
It's like wearing a parrot or something?
They can communicate and they can identify one another. It's crazy.
That's honestly
I don't
hilarious.
know. I don't know what's going to happen, but
because in the movie, the rings seem incredibly powerful.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, okay. Like the trajectory, like what, like of what like Shang-Chi can do and bring to the MCU. It's like, ooh, like where is he gonna fit in, and how is he gonna interact with other characters? I'm like, oof.
And I think I said this to you the first time we saw it at the screening, but I was like, dude, like seeing the power that comes out of that kid in that movie, I was like, this is how they're gonna win the next big baddie. Because like I could see him like and hopefully you'll all be able to see this in theaters or on Disney Plus, but the power this kid has, I was like, oh my god, he could go cosmic. And it was so crazy to me, like not to stray too far from the topic, but that the beginning of the film really settles in that special, well, not even the beginning, but as they introduce Shang-Chi himself, he's very street level. Very street level.
Yep.
Very, very, very. And I love street level. Like street level heroes are my bread and butter. But to then bring him to this mystical place and this mystical plane and then introduce a cosmic thing, like somewhere perhaps, like especially with the other characters involved in the phase 4, is like, is he going to be the key to them winning? Like he could be. He could be. And that's an awesome thought. That's an awesome feeling, I think.
That's insane.
So we'll see. We'll see what the rings and what power they behold in the MCU as time passes, I suppose. Yeah. When we'll see them next, who knows?
Yeah.
And so we got a question from Instagram. Good old Andrew.
Yes.
What would you like to see in the sequel? Fing Fang Foom. I want Fing Fang Foom.
More dragons.
Fing Fang Foom. More dragons for sure. Morris would be cute too.
I think.
Morris.
That will be the rest of the episode, guys. Is Dai going.
He is an actual voice actor, by the way.
Of course he does. He probably got paid for
But
it.
he's like a legend, D. Baker.
Oh.
And so he.
I feel like I've heard that name.
Yeah, no, he's a legend. He's truly a legend. He is also. He's voiced Hank Pym, Mysterio, J. Jonah Jameson, Scorpion, Daredevil, Lockjaw, Tippy Toe in various Marvel animated series and video games.
My gosh.
And that's just Marvel. He's
Okay.
also in DC stuff. And so he was, this was what I wanted to talk about real quick. He was Sebastian in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, aka the Rat. He was the Rat.
Oh my god.
So the Rat Sebastian is also Morris from Shang-Chi.
Love that.
I love it. Broad range, this guy. D. Baker, hey ho.
But back to Andrew's question.
Yeah.
I feel like spoiler, his sister's gonna play a big part.
Yeah.
Because the 10 Rings will return.
Ling Ling!
So, because to his knowledge, Shang-Chi's knowledge, he thought that, like my sister's back in.
She's cleaning up shop.
Cleaning up shop. She's like destroying my father's empire.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, she's rebuilding that shit for herself because she's like, I've always wanted to run my father's empire or run that empire.
If my father does not want to include me in his empire,
Yeah.
I will build my own.
So
Oh, look who's doing the impersonations now.
nice.
Charming.
And then what? To Shang-Chi's surprise,
Yeah.
she's like, sis,
Yeah.
I thought you were ending this.
Can
And she
you
was
imagine
like,
his
nah, what you gonna do about it? Boom, bam,
no.
boom.
Yeah.
Fee, fang, foom.
face? Fake. Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
And then I also hope they also explore, spoiler alert, Talo. Because it's like, I was like thinking about it, like as I was watching, like when they finally get into there, I was like, oh, like this isn't a place like you go to. Like this isn't like a Wakanda. Like,
Yeah.
you can just go and secretly go
Yeah.
in. This is like
A full-fledged other dimension.
other dimension, universe kind of. Because like they go through the whole magical like way to get in there. I was like, oh, like this is
Yeah.
like a whole nother thing.
And so, you know what I found very interesting about their verbiage when it came to Talo is like they mentioned it as another world,
Yes.
another universe,
Yes.
another dimension. And so I was like, okay, I think that like if I had any beef about the film, I would just be like, oh,
What is it?
What is that exactly?
Yes.
Because you say universe, that's a big word. That's a big word. Like, are they then? Is there another Shang-Chi in that universe?
Yeah, sure.
Is there
I
another
get that,
mother?
yeah.
Like, and so that kind of
Like choose one.
yeah. And so I would sooner say dimension because it's not necessarily another universe. It's just another part where
Maybe
you
they'll
can't
explain
go.
it in the future,
Yeah.
but I mean,
And this is why I thought they were gonna. This is why I think the representation and the bringing of Kunlun into the mix with Iron Fist is huge because Nan even mentions when she's telling the story of their people, she's like, we have many cities, like many cities. It's like, oh,
interesting.
Kunlun could be one of those cities.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But I thought that was pretty awesome to see.
Yeah.
Like it's like this mystical place because then you see his mother's powers in the beginning. You're like, okay, what is that? Where is she drawing her powers from? And it's obviously from the Great Protector or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, that place looks super. It needs to be explored more.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I hope it does get explored more.
I agree. Ditto. Same. I couldn't add anything else. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And again,
because I love
Charlie.
seeing obviously the like badass women, and so we got that with his mother. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And then his sister, and now she's taken on this whole new kind of
Mandarin. It's almost like a Mandarin seat. And so still spoiler alert. I think perhaps because the fresh coat of paint that is very literal.
Yeah.
In that scene at the very, very dead end of the movie is that it's like perhaps she's
so very curious to see like how now the brother sister dynamic worked, since obviously in this movie it was very it was broken
yeah.
And then so now it's like, and then towards the end of the movie, it's like they kind of
They've
mended,
yeah.
But then now it's like, oh my God, you're starting back up the 10 rings again.
Exactly. Like, oh no.
What are we doing?
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. And I know Simu has said himself, he's like, he doesn't know when he will be
back for
in the Shang-Chi seat. So we'll find out.
We'll see.
Hopefully sooner than later. And so speaking of the Shang-Chi seat, we're gonna hit the almost was.
This one I'm very curious about.
And so I was telling Jeff before the show, I found 2 more that actually kind of were considered for this role. And so this is one of our favorite sort of subjects as far as doing these character studies go. And so, yeah, initially it was like 2 people. And then I kept digging and digging and digging it, and I found more and more. And so now the roster's pretty long. And so I don't know how many of these you might be familiar with. But, you know, like I mentioned earlier, as far as the film's history itself goes, and it goes spanning back so far, you have to remember that I don't know how long casting typically takes, but these actors that I'm about to mention were all like hit up in 2019. Which is literally a year and a half ago. Yes, so it was a very tight schedule. I can imagine that it was like, maybe they had like their ideal 3 and they were just like gonna hold on to that list, but here we go. And so the first candidate was Alex Landy. I am not familiar with him or his work, but he's from Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
Ludi Lin, who, speaking of Mortal Kombat, he played Liu Kang. In the new film. Yeah, and I loved him. I thought he was fantastic. Yeah. Okay. He was one of my favorite parts of that movie. And I don't know if you knew this about me, but I love Mortal Kombat. Yeah. And so to see his version of Liu Kang that was really like, it was almost as good as the original, if not comparable to the original actor whose name completely escapes me right now. I think he did a fantastic job, and he was a great martial artist in that film. And so he would have been an interesting take. Another interesting take is Ross Butler. I don't know if you've seen 13 Reasons Why, but he's the tall Asian guy in that show. Okay. And he's also Adult Eugene in Shazam. Yeah, and he's great in Shazam. I loved him in Shazam. Okay. Mike Mo, who played Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay, yeah. Mike
Fantastic.
Mo,
yeah. Oh, great actor. Then, of course, it comes down to the final 3, who were Louis Tan, of course, because Louis Tan, who was also in Mortal Kombat, playing an original character, not an original character, but, and he actually played Zhou Cheng in Iron Fist.
Oh,
so he's
Louis
in.
Tan. Okay, if I see his face, I probably know
He's Shatterstar in Deadpool.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So I like him as Shatterstar. I couldn't see him as Shang-Chi in particular, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
And then this one was a surprising one that I found today. But of course he would have been nominated because he's fantastic. Steven Yeun.
Steven Yeun, yeah.
Yeah, from The Walking Dead. And of course, you know, what's his, Minari? Was it Minari? His new film.
Oh, yes.
And then, of course, our boy Simu Liu.
That would have been interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and so Simu, of course, got it, and all thanks to that one tweet. So that's cool.
I remember there's a story of it. Like he got the call on a Sunday, or he auditioned on like a Sunday or whatever, or whatever it was, and then like he got the call saying like, "Oh, you got it," and then he went to Comic-Con 4 days later. Yeah, he went to
Comic-Con
4 days later.
I have the video because I was there, and so that's why I'm saying like. Wow, that must have been
nonstop,
super tight. And imagine the pressure of like, yo, we're going to Comic-Con in 4 days. You have to pick somebody.
This is the Comic-Con where they announced all of Phase 4, and everybody was there.
Everybody was there.
Because he always brings up like, he did an AMA, right, Simu?
Yeah.
And so he was just like, what was like your favorite moment so far, like after being part of this MCU? He was like, at Comic-Con where we took a picture and I just feel Benedict Cumberbatch's hand on my shoulder.
I love him.
He was like, it was like having a super sexy dad just comfort you. And
super sexy dad. I love him so much.
So that must have been like super crazy. He's like, I got the call, like I'm Kaz, and then like you meet like the whole cast basically.
Well, and like you said earlier, you know, like for those who don't know, like Simu used to be a stock photo model. Like, what the?
Hilarious.
So great. Now he's Shang-Chi. That's crazy. He's an action figure.
I know.
Dude. Oh, God.
Yeah.
So, some quick suggested reading for anybody who is the least bit interested in this character. I would obviously refer to more modern titles. As previously mentioned, Secret Avengers by Ed Brubaker. Also previously mentioned 2019's Agents of Atlas, written by Greg Pak and Jeff Parker. And then the most recent series, solo title series, Shang-Chi, written by Jean Yang, are both great. And yeah, so that's, believe it or not, the end of the show.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Really?
Wow. Oh, man.
But it's worth noting that this Shang-Chi itself only has a theatrical window of 45 days. So, if you can, and if you feel safe doing so, please go see the film.
The numbers just came out today for the projected
And
for
how
the
are
weekend. As of right now, it's made 71.
Okay,
around 70.
let's go.
And then when the Labor Day weekend ends,
Yeah.
like around like 80.
God, I like really, and I commented this on a Shang-Chi account. I was like, can we make it 100? Like, can we just make it 100? That would be amazing.
It's tough.
It's so tough right now. And so, yeah, if you can and you feel safe, please go see it in theater, see it in IMAX if you can afford to. Otherwise, it will be on Disney Plus after that 45-day grace period. So everyone can enjoy it then.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll be watching it a few times.
100%. Yeah. Like once it comes out, I'm definitely going to be watching it. I was seeing on Twitter that like this is moving up to a lot of people's top 5, top 3 like Marvel movies. And it's like, I was like, you know what? Yeah, like
honestly,
when it comes to origin movies and just like scale and like story.
Yeah, that was actually a question I was going to ask you. Like, you know, given that this is an origin story, like where does this rank in your favorite, your top 3? Top 3, 5, whatever.
Origin movies or just
origin movies?
Origin movies only.
Marvel origin movies.
Oh, it's pretty.
That's a tough one, right?
That is pretty tough because there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
Obviously, Captain America is a really solid one. First, Iron Man, obviously.
Yeah.
But I might have a little bit of an Asian bias here.
Yeah, I know. Like,
but just because, like, obviously, I know so much that's going about this movie because, like, when it comes to American movies, let alone comic book movies, Marvel movies, and American movies in general, they don't do fight choreography that well. For example, or at least, and also edit them well too.
Yeah.
For example, and I love these movies too, some of the Bourne movies.
Yeah. No, I said that to my dad.
Yeah, like they're so overly edited, and it's like
hundreds of cuts.
This is coming from me because I'm a video editor, and so it's like it shouldn't take 5 edit cuts to show one fight move.
No,
especially
and it's like,
and you don't even know what you're looking at. And then so that was like the first thing that I was like looking for when we saw our first screening of Shang-Chi. Yeah. And I was like, okay, let's see how these fight scenes. And that's why the very first fight scene between Tony Leung and Fala Chen is my favorite fight scene of the movie. And the movie has a lot of amazing fight scenes.
So good.
But that first one, when it comes to storytelling, fight style, the way it's shot and cut,
it's so beautiful.
It's just like, when you guys see it, or if you guys have seen it already, like you have to understand like just like the cadence of like that fight, because when it comes to what I've learned in like foreign films, when I do martial arts and everything and fighting, a fight in a movie has to tell a story. If the fight does not tell a story, why are you doing it? It's a waste of time. That very first fight between Tony Leung and Fala Chen tells a complete story, like from like act 1 to act 3, and you're gonna be like, and the way that's shot, and you're like, it's amazing.
It's genuinely beautiful. It's genuinely
like
beautiful.
Like how different in contrast like they are in fighting styles, and how I was like this is like the slow-mo part of the fight. I was like no, this is no, this is amazing. Just stop it.
And of course the parallels that are then repurposed, or that we see at the end of the film, or near the end of the film.
Every fight like was connected.
It had purpose.
It was like from its predecessor of the fight.
I mean, I stand true. Like, as much as I love that fighting scene, like it's number 2 for me. But that freaking bus scene.
The bus scene too was
the last half of that fight. Like the fight itself is tremendous, but the last half of it was very reminiscent to me of Peggy Carter's most recent fight in What If. when she's going through the hallway and they show it from the side perspective and she's just going through.
Which is a very... I don't know if I'm right. It's a very famous made scene from one of the like these Asian movies where it's a one take from like the side of a hallway.
Oh yeah.
And I think it might be The Raid.
Oh yeah, no, I think it is. I think
it is The Raid.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it has
and
to be.
my friend Brandon just mentioned to me, like he was like, oh, how was Shang-Chi? He was just, I was like, dude, it's like a foreign Asian film, like like fighting wise, but with Marvel.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, cool, like very like Raid. I was like, I think they literally like recreated like one of the fight scenes from The Raid.
So
they used that shooting style.
Yeah.
So like.
That
was
the
great.
shooting style,
yes.
And so
I noticed that too from the bus scene where
inside, and it's so cool because it's telling, like you just said, it's telling a story in its own way. Like not only is it dynamic and it's like, holy balls, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that translated just weeks ago from an animated version, which then all. Those two plus the infamous Daredevil hallway scenes are also incredible. And they're all they just carry this weight of storytelling that's just like I don't know.
Every fight told a story in the film, and I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like that, as long as it does that. Yeah. Especially with when Simu fights. Yeah. Excuse me, when Simu fights Michelle Yeoh. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. That's why I don't know if you saw me during the second time we saw it. Yeah. Like during that fight scene, I was just like. I was like, oh god! I was like, no, this is too good. This is too amazing.
And so that said, I mean, given that is very much a characteristic of the origin story itself, that's kind of wild to think about. It does really push it up there for me, but again, I'm so easy that it's then hard to pick because, like, while my parents were visiting, my dad hadn't seen Ant-Man, and so I put it on for him. And he was loving it, and I was like, I really love this story, and I love like the origin of Scott Lang. Yeah. And then all of the origins are so tough; it's hard.
It also does help that the actors playing them.
Oh, they're just so good.
They're so charismatic. Yeah. They understand. They understood the assignment.
Yeah. And so I couldn't tell you where it ranks for me, but it's.
I think Shang-Chi definitely. I think it's for sure a top 3.
I definitely understand. So. Yeah, I definitely understand how it could be for some folks. I don't know. It might be. It might climb still because. Man, Simu and that cast are just so fantastic.
Amazing cast. It's literally a cast of like, and if you don't know of like a lot of like Asian like foreign films, like the cat, like
it's such a great.
Like we said at the top of the show, like Tony Leung is a legend.
Yes.
Like go watch his stuff. I've maybe seen. I don't know if I've seen that many or at all, but I know that he's a legend.
Yeah, exactly.
Like even if I haven't seen it. Yeah. Like I know that he's legendary in that space. So for him to do this film and his first American film and absolutely crushed it. Yeah.
And and not to sorry, like this is supposed to be the end of the show, but
I know.
But like
we're Asian, okay? We got it.
I kind of want to do a Mandarin / Wenwu episode because Wenwu in particular goes from an area where he, and I, the first thing I thought of with him is that I didn't want to call him a villain. He is a bad guy, but he's not a villain. Yeah. And I think what they did a fantastic job of humanizing his character in particular in the film. And because his part in Shang-Chi's story is so vital and so important to who he becomes. Yeah. And so Tony just did incredible job. And in that article, I think I found it after you had mentioned it was with Tony himself and Simu was quoted like he has this way of looking at a person and he can tell stories with just the gaze of his eyes. He's an
amazing actor with his eyes.
Yes. Yeah, he's an amazing eye actor. And I've definitely noticed this even more in the latest
and then
viewings.
And then when it comes to like the Wenwu's like character itself, obviously it's a new character. Yeah. And so I read a couple of interviews or saw a couple of interviews of like, so they have to kind of reinvent this. Mm-hmm. And so with Tony, he was saying that like, he was like, if I don't believe this character, I can't become this character. Yes,
exactly.
And so like he created like this backstory for this character. It's like why, basically like understand the character's motivations.
Yes.
And so, and then he got that. He got all of that.
Fantastically.
Yeah. So,
an
amazing cast.
Go see it. Please go see it. Please go see it. Anyway, thanks for listening. We are Groot. Salute this episode to Jenny, Ed, Melanie, Andrew, Joliz, Claire, and Robin. So I'm trying to actually make more of this particular tier available. And I did not show you yet. It's a little surprise, but you might have seen it in our email. But I'm designing a new piece of merchandise to help open up some more We Are Groot salute slots. So if you want to become a Patreon, stay tuned for that. Follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. If you like what you hear, once again, we have Patreon. So if you want to support us for as little as $12 a year, you can do that. And that's it.
We did it. Go see Shang-Chi, guys.
Go see Shang-Chi.
It's amazing.
It's good. It's so great.
And we will see you in the next one.
Air punching.
Boom, boom, boom. Bye.
Bye.
My name is Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
Shang.
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 That's what I said.